In this lesson, we're going to spend some time looking at different ways we can classify computer networks. We're going to focus on classifying networks according to the roles that the individual hosts on that network fulfill. Specifically, we're going to discuss two different types of networks. These are peer-to-peer and client-server networks. Let's first look at a peer-to-peer network. In a peer-to-peer network, the individual hosts don't have a specific role. Hosts on a peer-to-peer network do two things at the same time. They both provide and consume network services. In a peer-to-peer network, there could be many different computer systems, and each fulfills a variety of different networking roles. For example, this workstation right here has a printer connected to it that's shared on the network, and this allows the other network hosts to send print jobs to it. In addition, this host over here has a huge hard disk drive installed, and all the other network hosts are allowed to access this shared hard disk drive. If we have a user over here, and he or she has a file that they need to save, they can save it over the network connection to this system's hard disk drive. As you can see in this situation, these network hosts both provide and consume network services at the same time. These two hosts provide a network service. This one provides printing, and this one provides storage. At the same time, all these hosts consume services. For example, this host prints to this workstation's printer, while this workstation saves files to the hard drive on this workstation. They function as both a client and as a server at the same time. Peer-to-peer networks have several different advantages. First of all, they're very easy to implement. You can create a peer-to-peer network using the existing workstations in your organization. There's no special software to buy. Once you've configured them in a peer-to-peer network, you can then share printers and you can share storage devices on the network with minimal configuration. All you have to do is share your locally connected resources. Another advantage of peer-to-peer networks is the fact that they're relatively inexpensive to implement. With a peer-to-peer network, you just use your standard desktop operating system on each host. There's no special software to purchase and implement. You might be asking, if peer-to-peer networks are so inexpensive and so easy to set up, why don't we see more of them? It's because peer-to-peer networks also have several drawbacks. For example, a peer-to-peer network is not scalable. The bigger it gets, the harder it is to manage and keep running. In addition, peer-to-peer networks are difficult to support because they lack centralized controls. For example, suppose we have some shared storage on the hard drive in this particular workstation. The user who uses this workstation decides that they need more storage space freed up so they can save their files. So that user goes through the hard disk drive looking for things that they don't think are important, and they throw them away. When this happens, they could potentially delete the files belonging to other network users. They have now lost their work, and this is not a good thing. In addition, suppose this workstation over here provides a shared printer that everybody in the network uses. Let's say the user decides to take a day off of work, but before they leave, they lock the office door and turn off the computer. When this happens, no one in the office can print anymore. If this host over here is down, users can't send print jobs to the printer. Another problem associated with peer-to-peer networks is the fact that data storage can end up being decentralized. For example, we could configure a shared folder on this system, and on this system. In this configuration, users may be saving sensitive company data in each of these shared folders on these different systems. In order to back up that critical company data, the system administrator has to visit each of those hosts individually and back each one up every night. This represents a lot of work, and it also makes it difficult to keep this important data organized. Another problem with peer-to-peer networks is user security. Peer-to-peer is inherently insecure, and when it grows beyond 10 users, it begins to suffer from performance and administrative problems. Each user is responsible for controlling access to all the resources on their computer. Each user gets to decide what's available and to whom. User accounts are decentralized because each system contains its own data. Also, backing up data is more difficult in a peer-to-peer network since data is stored on different computer systems and there's no centralized backup server. Peer-to-peer networks are also more prone to virus attacks and malware. This is because the connected computers are independent of each other. If one of the computers becomes infected, there's a strong chance that others will get infected even if they're protected by antivirus software. Each user must make sure their system is updated with current antivirus software. There's a second type of computer network that you need to be familiar with that addresses a lot of the shortcomings of a peer-to-peer network. This is called a client-server network. Unlike a peer-to-peer network, in a client-server network, the network hosts have specific roles assigned to them. For example, some specific hosts are assigned to be servers. A server provides network resources. The other hosts function as clients. A client doesn't provide network services, but instead consumes network services. For example, these client workstations here don't have any kind of a shared storage. They also don't have any kind of shared printer attached to them. These services are provided by the server. For example, suppose this server here has a humongous hard drive installed, and it also manages a shared network printer. It could also even have a web server running that provides web pages to these client systems. In this scenario, the server provides the network resources, and the clients simply use those resources. In order to set up a client-server network, different operating systems have to be installed on the various systems. First of all, our client workstations need to use a desktop operating system that allows the end user to do their daily work. They need to be able to run desktop applications, and they also have to have some type of client software installed so they can connect to the server and use shared resources. The server, on the other hand, has to use a specialized operating system that's optimized just to perform server tasks. It's not used to perform client-type tasks such as word processing, creating spreadsheets, and so on. Server operating systems are designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to provide network resources. One of the main benefits of using a client-server network is the fact that it's very scalable. It's relatively easy to expand the size of the network. You can add clients, you can add more servers, and it handles this really well. In addition, client-server networks are also much easier to support because all of these services are centralized in a limited number of locations. For example, suppose you have a user that's having problems accessing their files. All you have to do is check the storage on the file server. Likewise, if you have users that are having trouble printing, all you have to do is check the printer managed by the server. Data protection is also a lot easier in a client-server network compared to a peer-to-peer network. The system administrator only needs to back up the shared data on the server. They don't have to go around to each individual client workstation and run a backup. There are some drawbacks associated with the client-server network. For example, they're a lot more expensive to implement. Server hardware and server operating systems are much more expensive than those used by client workstations. In addition, this type of network takes a lot more planning. With a peer-to-peer network, we tend to just throw things together and make it work. But that doesn't work in a client-server network. In a client-server network, you have to plan out which servers are going to host which services and where they're going to be placed on the network before you start installing hardware and configuring operating systems. That's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we discussed the differences between peer-to-peer networks and client-server networks. In a peer-to-peer network, the individual hosts both provide and consume network services at the same time. In a client-server network, certain hosts are designated as servers and they provide network services. All of the other hosts are clients, and they consume those services provided by the server.